Along the crowded coast of Southern California, life revolves around the ever-present sun and the ever-changing sea. But even those who can master the mighty Pacific surf have little sense of the other world that lies beyond the shining wave. This mysterious realm has its own strange forests, plains, and deserts.
Starting us off today, we have, of course, aliens. Now, before you click away, let me explain. Our world was formed over the course of billions of years, during which time countless comets and asteroids continuously collided with our planet. Scientists at NASA believe that it is these comets that brought water to planet Earth and filled our oceans. Why do they think this? Well, because of chemical markers found in our oceans. The isotopic levels of our ocean water are incredibly similar to some of the oldest meteorites in the solar system, which would be virtually impossible unless it was ancient meteorites who delivered the water to our planet in the first place. Here's the thing though, when the asteroids crashed on Earth and subsequently created our oceans, the water inside would have been accompanied by organic materials. You see where I'm going with this. Organic materials that have been evolving for the past 3.8 billion years. While it is quite possible that humans are a result of this biological material, it's also possible that we're not the only result. And considering only 5% of our oceans have been explored, I'd say it's pretty possible and maybe even probable that some kind of other unfathomable creature lurks below the depths of the deep seas. Not only that, but each time a new asteroid hits our oceans, I feel like it brings forward a whole new possibility of evolutionary life.
What's the scariest, most mind-boggling thing in space? Well, to my knowledge, it would have to be black holes. Now, luckily, all of them are way too far away to pose any real threat to us here on Earth, or even for astronauts out in space for that matter, but the deep sea has its own kind of version of black holes. Eddies, and they are not too far away to pose significant threats. Eddies are basically circular currents, sort of like a whirlpool, that form within the larger ocean currents. Eddies can be small or big, and when I say big, I mean some of them can actually be seen from space, which is pretty scary. Now, there's not as much mystery surrounding eddies as there is with actual black holes, of course. It's pretty obvious where you'd end up if you were dragged into one of these things, but arguably it would be scarier as well, because with a black hole, it's like, well, who knows really what's in there? Could be good. Probably not, but there's a possibility. With eddies, I mean, you just drown. Drowning is probably one of the worst ways to die. And that's the other horrifying thing about these massive sized ones. Nothing can escape, just like with a black hole. Anything caught up just gets sucked in. And if you're thinking you can just wait it out, maybe you can, but some of these whirlpools can last for hours, days, and in some cases, there have been ones that have been circulating for years.
So if we go back to the reason for water on Earth and take a moment to seriously consider the fact that the organic material brought to Earth by the same asteroids that brought us water have had 3.8 billion years to evolve, I'm gonna go ahead and say that it's pretty likely that it did. And it evolved into something NASA has kept us in the complete dark about. There have been rumors going around that during the 2022 Orpheus expedition, in which a NASA submersible traveled down into the uncharted depths of our oceans, they found something. Something that they don't want us to know about. I mean, makes sense. It's not like this would be the first time that NASA has tried to keep something from the public. The submersible was deployed to explore the Hadal Zone, which is some 6,000 to 11,000 meters below sea level, and it includes the Mariana Trench. In fact, the Mariana Trench is just one of 30 subduction zones, or trench zones in simpler terms, that make up the Hadal. During NASA's 2022 mission, while exploring the depths under the guise of getting a better understanding of how to explore the moon's oceans, it is believed that they stumbled across something massive and never seen before. Underwater megafauna, massive animals, which was actually confirmed by an astronaut by the name of Garrett Reisman, who claims to have seen the eye of one of the creatures, and he described it as being as big as a flying saucer. Interesting analogy from a NASA astronaut.
Alright, expanding on Hannah's point a bit, some stories have been floating around about NASA coming across disturbing creatures deep in the ocean's depths. NASA is taken to exploring some of the deepest waters on Earth, the idea being that if they can learn more about the deep sea right here at home, they'll have a better understanding of what could be in deep sea environments on other planets. They also get a chance to test equipment in a similar environment to space. Now, NASA hasn't come out and said this on their own, but there have been some anonymous whistleblowers posting about experiences they've had on dives, with stories about running into dangerous creatures while on these deep sea explorations, intelligent creatures resembling humanoid cephalopods who seem to intentionally sabotage equipment. Now, are these stories real, or are they just some internet fun? Well, about 80% of the ocean is unexplored, and seeing as it takes up about 70% of the planet overall, hey, I could see there being something down there other than dumb fish.
At our halfway point today, we have an underwater volcano threatening to split the Earth open. Light stuff, While generally underwater volcanoes provide hydrogen, sulfide, and other minerals to deep sea life, allowing thriving ecosystems to form at unforgivable depths, one volcano in particular, located just off of the coast of Tonga, seems to be kind of doing the opposite. On January 15th of 2022, big year, the volcano exploded with a force equal to 15 million tons of TNT. The eruption was among the most powerful ever recorded, and it sent water vapor 83 miles up into the stratosphere, causing temporary rises to temperatures in the surrounding area. Not only that, but the eruption reshaped the sea floor. The rim around the volcano had been replaced by a cavern that travels down 850 meters into the Earth's crust. Hopefully it doesn't get any deeper, because if it does, kind of like your ex, we're gonna have some serious issues.
There's some pretty intriguing stories about possible alien bases underwater as well. Take the Solomon Islands, for example. There have been stories for hundreds of years about strange objects hovering above the islands and then descending down into the waters below. Locals on these islands also have stories about terrifying creatures stalking the forests, coming out of intricate cave systems underground, and this is just one example. There are said to be alien bases deep under the Alaska ice. Strange UFO-type objects have been spotted maneuvering through waters across the globe. We have a whole video on it. Top 10 mysterious UFOs discovered underwater. Check it out. So perhaps NASA already knows about alien life that's taken up residency here on Earth. Maybe the deep sea is their domain. I ain't saying this is what I believe. By the way, I'm just throwing some ideas at you.
Next on our list, we have NASA's discovery of a city of lights found in the middle of the ocean, in an area with no land or electricity. In 2012, a map of the Earth at night was published by the Earth Observatory in collaboration with NASA and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Everything seemed relatively normal except for one area off the coast of Argentina. You guessed it, a city of lights was shown on the map in a shape that almost resembles an arrowhead, or maybe like the Eiffel Tower. Anyways, it was weird, especially considering the fact that in the area in which the lights are shown, Like I said, there's no land. I am repeating myself a lot today. NASA claimed that the lights were a result of fishing boats in the area, but I think it's pretty obvious that NASA is not to be trusted, as they do seem to have a pretty extensive history of secret keeping going on. Plus, the only images ever released of the area were those taken by a satellite at night. I have a feeling something else is going on, but let me know what you think. Do you believe the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, who I have not one, not two, but 3 videos on exposing leaked information they wanted to keep secret? I don't.
So it's not just undiscovered intelligent life forms deep sea divers have to worry about, it's all the primitive creatures as well, some known and some less known. Sure, there are wild stories about humanoid cephalopods attacking researchers down below or alien bases down there, but while those stories are fun, there is the actual very real possibility of running into something big that could pose a threat to the safety of the crew. Luckily, great whites don't really swim all that deep down, but there's other stuff going on down there. Giant squids are real, and who knows what else could be lurking down there. In the words of Qui-Gon Jinn, there's always a bigger fish. Wise words. You could have giant sea serpents, giant man-eating deep-sea piranhas that can see in the dark. Point is, space is dangerous, sure, but at least you don't have sentient life forms floating around the spacecraft on a constant basis.
And finally, we have the fact that in 2011, 87 World War II explosives made their way out of the ocean and on to Calshot Beach in England, surprising and terrifying locals and tourists alike. Although I'm not sure why you'd want a vacation on the beaches of England. Isn't like the whole country's thing like being really rainy? Anyways, the many explosive devices were managed by a 5-man bomb squad, which seems a little too relaxed if you ask me. 5 men, 87 bombs. Besides the point, an exclusion zone of 1,000 meters was set up around Calshot Beach to ensure the safety of civilians, while the devices were stacked 300 meters offshore during low tide. When high tide came, they were detonated. The bomb squad continued to comb the beach, the waters, the shores, and a little bit deeper, but luckily, I think no more were found. I think because if they weren't found and they're still there, that's pretty dangerous. If you think that's bad, allow me to remind you that to date, the United States alone has reported, keyword reported, 6 missing nuclear bombs that were lost to the ocean. NASA knows this. I mean, it's public information, so obviously, but I'm betting they probably know the real number too. So I guess it makes sense that they are doing their best to avoid the ocean and to get the heck off this planet as a whole. I mean, if you're gonna die by radiation, might as well do it with a good view of the cosmos, right?
Finally though, what about all the mysterious threats in the deep sea? Things that we just can't quite explain. All the triangles referring to strange sections of water where odd stuff seems to happen all the time. The Bermuda Triangle is of course the most well known, but there are others like the Lake Michigan Triangle, for example. Not that NASA would be exploring Lake Michigan. Places where disappearances seem to happen. Planes will disappear while flying overhead. Ships seem to have accidents or just vanish altogether. Some blame it on treacherous weather. Others think there could be some kind of strange electromagnetic interference in these areas that messes with equipment. These are just theories, of course, but there are so many mysterious incidents in the Bermuda Triangle alone. The disappearance of Flight 19 in 1945, the disappearances of the USS Cyclops in 1918. In 1948, Flight DC-3 went missing, never to be seen again. The Witchcraft vessel in 1967. The list goes on and on. The ocean is vast, mysterious, and dangerous. Most of it is still unexplored, yes, and it's not hard to see why.
Starting off our list today, we have the absolutely crazy amount of shipwrecks that have occurred in the Gulf of Mexico. In 2018, a report released by Ocean Explorer revealed that oil and gas companies had discovered an outstanding 600 shipwrecks and possible shipwrecks in the Gulf of Mexico while surveying the area at depths of up to 2,316 meters or 9,800 feet. 33 of these ships have been visually confirmed by either divers or remotely operated vehicles as historic vessels. And although only 600 shipwrecks and possible shipwrecks have been discovered by these companies to date, it is estimated that over 4,000 5,000 shipwrecks reside on the ocean floor of the Gulf of Mexico, sitting anywhere from the nearshore shallows all the way out to the deepest abyss of the Gulf. But that's not even the weirdest part. While attempting to explore a particular shipwreck, teams experienced submarine malfunctions, failed video monitors, sonar breaking, haywire hydraulics, and self-destructing rovers, which of course begs the question, are some of these shipwrecks possibly cursed, or maybe they contain levels of radiation that affect these machines, or is there some kind of electromagnetic phenomenon going on in these waters that we just haven't discovered yet? Next up, we have the fact that the bottom of the Pacific Ocean is leaking, which sounds terrifying, probably because it is. In April of last year, 2023, scientists discovered that a leak at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean is not spewing water, as they once assumed back in 2015, but rather it is leaking tectonic lubricant with temperatures ranging between 300 and 500 degrees Fahrenheit. The leak sits directly on top of the 600-mile-long Cascadia subduction zone fault, which sits approximately 15 to 20 kilometers or 50 to 65,000 feet below sea level. So why is this absolutely terrifying? Well, scientists believe that this leak could cause one of the strongest earthquakes the US and the world has ever seen, with a magnitude of 9.0, which is just 0.5 less than the largest magnitude earthquake to occur in recorded history. I don't know about you guys, but to me that sounds like a pretty good reason to get the heck out of the ocean. Next up on our list today, we have the mysterious light wheels seen in the Indian Ocean, the South China Sea, and the Persian Gulf. Also known as the Wheels of Poseidon, light wheels are a strange phenomenon in which massive blooms of light illuminate the ocean around a vessel in a circular formation that mimic the spokes of a wheel. While the light itself is pretty easily explainable, bioluminescence, living organisms that emit light through chemical reactions when the water around them becomes agitated, the shape formed by the bioluminescence is incredibly perplexing. Because of this, these wheels have become known as the crop circles of the ocean, and many theories including underwater electromagnetic activities and even alien influence have arisen as a result. Next up, I want to take a moment to talk about all of the wonderful, beautiful, incredibly deadly animals that are lucky enough to call the ocean home. Animals like the Portuguese man-o-war, the blue-ringed octopus, the cone snail, the Australian box jellyfish, and the stonefish, along with so many others. If you want to die a slow and painful death, these creatures are the companions for you. The Portuguese man-o-war is highly toxic and it floats on the surface of the water, making it incredibly easy to come into contact with. Just brushing up against the tentacles of this thing causes intense burning sensations, pain, paresthesia, and even death. The cone snail, while tiny, is also incredibly deadly, loaded with toxins that cause damage to nerve receptors, leading to extreme pain, muscle paralysis, blurred vision, respiratory paralysis, and of course, death. Blue-ringed octopus, small, poisonous, deadly. Its toxins make your muscles unable to contract, leaving your heart unable to pump blood. The Australian box jellyfish can kill you in 5 minutes, and of course the stonefish, which impales you with its sharp dorsal fins before releasing an incredibly powerful toxin into your bloodstream that causes skeletal and muscle paralysis, seizures, convulsion, respiratory arrest, damage to the cardiovascular system, and of course, drumroll please, death exists in the ocean as well. So can't blame them. That's some pretty scary stuff. Next up, we have the fact that the ocean contains deadly underwater lakes, aka brine pools. At the bottom of the Red Sea, at a depth of around 1,770 meters, scientists discovered something strange. A brine pool, which is made up of highly concentrated seawater, roughly 3 to 8 times saltier than the surrounding ocean. It looks like a pond sitting at the bottom of the sea floor. Super cool to look at, also super deadly to enter. You see, brine pools, believe it or not, contain a lethal amount of saline, salt, which replaces the oxygen content in the water. Brine pools also contain poisonous chemicals, including hydrogen sulfide. While there are some microbes that can survive brine pools, fish, crabs, eels, and humans cannot. And brine pools aren't exclusive to the Red Sea either. The Jacuzzi of Despair is another that scientists have discovered, and this one resides in the Gulf of Mexico. It has a circumference of about 100 feet and it reaches a depth of about 12 feet. Like other brine pools, its water is so dense it refuses to mix with its surroundings, and if you enter it, you will most likely die. Next up, we've got the radioactive waters of the Irish Sea, English Channel, and the Arctic Ocean, as well as the Kara Sea and the Barents Sea. You see, for years, radioactive waste has been improperly disposed of into some of the world's largest bodies of water. A British nuclear fuels plant is responsible for raising the radiation levels of the Irish Sea after repeatedly releasing radioactive waste into its waters. Similarly, a French nuclear reprocessing plant released copious amounts of waste into the English Channel. And if you think that's bad, for decades it has been reported that Russia has been dumping large quantities of radioactive materials into the Arctic Ocean as well as the Kara and Barents Sea. All of this has caused an increase in the radioactivity of not only seawater, but sea life as well. I really don't blame NASA for wanting to keep their lead scientists out of waters contaminated with radioactive materials known to cause fatigue, hair loss, memory loss, concentration problems, nausea, vomiting, headaches, blurry vision, and of course cancer. Next up, we have the fact that our oceans are absolutely littered with dead bodies. In the United States alone, approximately 4,400 unidentified bodies are found in the ocean each year, and globally that number is around 260,000. And these are just the ones that we found that we were unable to identify, meaning that the actual number of bodies floating around or slowly decomposing beneath the surface of the oceans is way more than that, which is both terrifying and disgusting, and also a good reason for anyone to decide not to step foot in the ocean. Personally, there is no way I would give up snorkeling just because of a few bodies floating around in the deep ocean, but if I actually saw one wash up on the shore, I might be inclined to change my mind. So I don't blame you, NASA. Next, we've got those unidentified sounds of the ocean, specifically the Julia and the bloop. The Julia was a noise recorded on March 1st of 1999 by the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and it sounds like this. Scientists have speculated that the sound was a result of an iceberg either breaking or smashing into another. The true origin of the Julia does remain unknown. And then of course there's also the bloop, another strange sound recorded in the ocean, this time in 1997, and the bloop sounds like this. Like the Julia, scientists believe that the bloop is the sound of an iceberg, probably breaking in half, which is probable, but it's still just speculation, and considering the fact that there have been numerous other sounds recorded by scientists that have been unable to be attributed to anything, let alone icebergs, who's to say the bloop and the Julia aren't the sounds of two giant underwater monsters communicating with one another or asserting dominance to an aquatic challenger. Next up, we've got the possibility that NASA decided to step away from exploring the ocean once they realized our planet was irreversibly doomed. I mean, maybe they have bigger fish to fry than figuring out what kind of big fish reside at the bottom of the ocean. It is possible that they are actively working towards ensuring the future of humanity as we know it, whether that future takes place on Earth or on a distant planet in a faraway galaxy. For all we know, the race to find the next inhabitable planet could already be well underway, and if it is, I guarantee NASA and the United States are working overtime to be the first. We all know how they like to get their flag in there first. And maybe they're doing this because of the fact that there are comets set to collide with the Earth in the next 2,000 years, or perhaps it's the fact that scientists are very well aware that eventually our home galaxy of the Milky Way will be getting swallowed up by our neighboring galaxy, the Andromeda. I don't know, I guess maybe they're looking at the big picture, pulling an Elon Musk, if you will. And then of course there is the theory that NASA is still very much exploring our oceans, but are doing their absolute best to keep things happening under the water, under the radar of the public. As I mentioned in part 1 of this video, many people believe that NASA has made many more discoveries than they have actually shared with us. Underwater cities and societies, gigantic megafauna, and even alien life forms are all possible reasons they might want to keep their findings a secret from the general public. That is, until they figure out their next steps. Speculations surrounding underwater facilities used to study unknown phenomena and massive underwater cages housing the world's largest sea creature, aka the Megalodon, have been circulating the internet for ages. It's possible that an aquatic Area 51 studying unidentified aquatic phenomena exists, and that one day the Pentagon will declassify those documents the way they declassify documents pertaining to peculiar happenings in our atmosphere such as UAPs and UFOs. Only time will tell.
Here's something you gotta think about when exploring the deep sea: earthquakes and tsunamis. Getting caught up in a natural disaster while deep underwater is incredibly dangerous. Astronauts have a lot to worry about, but earthquakes aren't one of them. You don't gotta worry about the Earth's crust shifting when you're not on Earth. Seismic activity beneath the ocean doesn't just trigger destruction on land, it also triggers massive waves, which can of course cause serious problems out at sea. First, you've got underwater earthquakes, giant shudders that happen deep beneath the ocean's surface when tectonic plates shift and grind against each other. We're talking about seismic waves that can shake the ocean floor like a rag doll. So, if you're diving or exploring the deep sea when one of these earthquakes hits, not good. You'd be tossed around with no control over where you're going or what's gonna happen next. And these underwater earthquakes can trigger tsunamis, massive walls of water traveling at high speed, swallowing up everything in their path. Ships, submarines, entire cities along coastlines. Tsunamis are a nightmare scenario for researchers out at sea. Imagine a tsunami barreling towards you from miles away, and by the time you realize what's happening, it's too late. You're caught in this storm of swirling water and debris with no way out, and even if you manage to escape the immediate danger, the aftermath of an underwater earthquake can be just as deadly. The seabed can shift and change in an instant, creating underwater landslides and whirlpools. Now let's talk more about landslides though. These can also be brought on by methane hydrate deposits. Methane hydrate deposits are basically chunks of ice that trap methane gas inside of them. These deposits are stable under high pressure and low temperatures, but when these conditions change, like if the ocean, say, is warming up or if the pressure drops, the methane hydrates can break down and release the methane gas. There are tons of these deposits sitting under the seabed, just waiting to be disturbed, and if that happens, the methane gas shoots up to the surface like a rocket, creating massive bubbles that can swallow up ships and cause explosions. And as I mentioned, there's the landslide part. Methane hydrate deposits can help stabilize the seafloor, so when they break down, it can lead to underwater landslides. These landslides can be massive, a bit like underwater avalanches. Another one of the many dangers of the sea: rogue waves, aka freak waves, killer waves, or monster waves, and they live up to their name. These are massive waves that can appear without warning, so pretty big threats to ships. You could be cruising along and enjoying the salty breeze when out of nowhere a massive wall of water, taller than a 10-story building, comes crashing down on you. They can appear seemingly out of nowhere in the middle of calm seas, and I wasn't exaggerating before. They can be huge. We're talking over 100 feet tall sometimes, which is insane. That's like a skyscraper just suddenly rising up from the ocean. What makes them so scary though is that unpredictability. They don't follow the usual patterns of waves, so sailors can't really prepare for them, at least not entirely. In one moment, you could be sailing smooth, and the next, you're facing towering walls of water that could easily capsize even large ships. And scientists still don't fully understand what causes rogue waves. One of the most dangerous sections of Earth's waters is the Sargasso Sea. The Sargasso Sea is like this floating jungle in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, but instead of trees, it's made of a unique type of seaweed called sargassum. This seaweed forms thick mats that can stretch for miles, and it creates this tangled maze. It's a bit eerie. It's kind of like a big floating desert. There's not much else around it except for the seaweed, and that sounds kind of peaceful, but for sailors, it's a different story. Navigating through all that sargassum is actually proven to be pretty dangerous. The Sargasso Sea has a very dark reputation. It's kinda known for swallowing up ships, and over the centuries there have been all these tales of sailors getting trapped in the area, the ships unable to move as they're slowly engulfed by the seaweed. Sounds awful. Underwater caves. Lots of divers have died exploring them. They're labyrinths beneath the surface of the ocean, and sure, they're exciting places to explore. They can be beautiful, but they're also packed with dangers. First off, navigating through an underwater cave is like trying to find your way through a pitch black maze. There are tunnels and chambers crisscrossing in all directions, and if you're not careful, it's easy to get lost. Imagine swimming deeper and deeper into the darkness with no idea which way is up or down. Then you have the risk of getting trapped. Some caves have narrow passages that can squeeze you in, and if you're not careful, you could find yourself wedged with no way out. Another danger of the deep sea are blue holes. These are basically underwater sinkholes, and they can be deceivingly beautiful because they're also incredibly dangerous. Giant gaping chasms in the ocean floor plunging down into the depths. You can see them from the sky. They're often darker blue in color, contrasting with the surrounding water, and they're dark because of how deep they are, for one, and sunlight can't reach the bottom. These holes vary in size and depth. Some extend several hundred feet below the ocean surface. The scariest thing about blue holes is that a lot of them are uncharted territory. Unlike on land, where we have maps and signs to help guide us, most blue holes are unexplored. You never know what you might encounter down there. Who knows what could be living in these areas, for one, but aside from that, there could be dangerous currents, and things do live in some of these blue holes. The Great Blue Hole off the coast of Belize, for example, has been explored, and there are tons of different shark species living down there. So these aren't places you can just go for a casual dive. Deep beneath the ocean's surface, there are these eerie chimneys called black smokers. These are hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor that emit superheated water, which is rich in minerals. But the extreme temperatures and the toxic chemicals can make these areas incredibly dangerous. They're a bit like underwater volcanoes, but instead of spewing lava, they belch out super hot water loaded with minerals. They're found near the edges of tectonic plates, where the Earth's crust is pulling apart, and when cold seawater seeps down into the cracks and meets hot magma below, it gets heated up and then shoots back out of the seafloor in these towering columns of scalding water. The water coming out can be hotter than boiling. We're talking temperatures that would cook you alive. And if that's not scary enough, they're also chock full of toxic chemicals like hydrogen sulfide, which can knock you out cold with just one whiff. Not that you'd really be swimming around down there anyway, to be fair, but still. So the conditions in these areas are pretty extreme, but there is actually life that can survive around black smokers, like tube worms, shrimp. There's a whole ecosystem down there that's adapted to thrive in one of the most inhospitable environments on Earth, which is pretty cool. Drowning is said to be one of the worst ways to go, and one easy way to drown, just get caught in a giant swirling vortex of water, a whirlpool. These are kind of like the black holes of the ocean, less mysterious of course, but incredibly deadly. And unlike black holes, which are way too far away from us to cause any harm, even for astronauts, whirlpools are everywhere. One of the most infamous whirlpools is called the Moskstraumen off the coast of Norway. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Probably not. Its currents are strong enough though to suck down ships, which can be torn apart like paper. Whirlpools can be massive, stretching for miles across, so if you happen to stumble on one while sailing or swimming, eesh. That's all I'm going to say is just eesh. And whirlpools can be unpredictable. They can form out of nowhere with no warning signs to let you know they're coming. So even if you're the most experienced sailor or swimmer, at the end of the day, we're all still at the mercy of Mother Nature. For all the terrifying creatures that are known to exist, there are also the mysterious ones, creatures that science hasn't documented, but people have claimed to see, and as intriguing as that is, it's just another one of the many reasons the deep sea is such a dangerous place. There are tons of creatures we could talk about. Let's take a creature that doesn't get talked about a whole lot though, a creature that's been dubbed the Moa Moa. The first documented sighting of the moa moa was on June 8th of 1890 on Great Sandy Island in Western Australia by a school teacher named Selina Lovell and a small group of her students. The creature was reported to be this huge monster turtle fish thing measuring about 30 feet in length. The creature was described as having a domed shaped body, almost like a turtle shell, about 8 feet across by 5 feet high, with an elongated neck and a 12-foot long tail. The creature's rounded jaws measured what looked to be about 18 inches. The head and tail almost looked like they belonged to two different animals. Lovell didn't get a good glimpse of the creature's feet, but locals have described the moa moa having almost alligator-like feet. Lovell watched the creature for half an hour from only about 5 feet away. Afterward, the moa moa turned towards the sea, lifting its body and tail above the water, tossing fish into the air, and then swam back down into the deeper water. And finally, I just gotta mention ghosts. Now, I know that sounds a bit silly. Most astronauts and scientists aren't really all that concerned about ghosts, but I mean, just think of all the ships that have sank or gone missing entirely, all the planes that have gone down and sank to the bottom of the water never to be seen again, all the battles that have taken place out at sea. Unlike the black void of space surrounding us here on Earth, our planet's waters are full of life, but also full of death. There are so many immediate dangers, so much unexplored territory. It's no wonder there are so many tales of ghost ships sailing aimlessly across the sea, or tortured spirits rising from the water to drag unsuspecting sailors into the depths. There could be tons of life out there in space and plenty of dangers we can't even fathom. But until we're able to venture out far enough, it seems like taking a trip to the moon may be a safer one than venturing down into the deepest, darkest depths of our very own planet.
Starting off our list today, we have Cuba's underwater city, the remains of a 12-acre city sitting at a depth of roughly 8,380 meters. In 2001, sonar scans off the coast of Cuba revealed that the seafloor was littered with geometric structures that could very well be the remains of a lost ancient city. And some experts even claim that using the same technology, they were able to identify the presence of a pyramid as well as a large sculpture of a sphinx sitting on the ocean floor. While it might be a bit far out there, there are some people who are claiming that Cuba's underwater city might actually be the lost city of Atlantis, which in its heyday was said to have held great knowledge and power as well as a great power source. Perhaps that source sank within the city, causing the electromagnetic activity in the area to go haywire, which might explain the 40 ships and 20 airplane disappearances in the area. I mean, it could be nothing. After the initial reports documenting the find were released, there were no follow-up reports or expeditions, but on the other hand, there probably were follow-up expeditions and it's just a cover-up. Next up, we've got the shark snacker. In 2014, it was discovered that something was attacking and eating great white sharks off the coast of southwest Australia. Scientists were alerted of the strange phenomenon after the research tag of a great white suddenly and quickly dove down to 1,903 feet into the depths of the ocean. Not only that, but the temperature of the tag actually increased as it made its descent from 46 to 78 degrees Fahrenheit. The only likely explanation for the fast descent paired with an increase in temperature was that the great white, the apex predator of the ocean, had been eaten by something bigger, faster, and stronger than it. Two theories emerged as to what kind of animal could have done this. One, it was an orca, also known as a killer whale, which are known to be incredibly aggressive and also twice as long and 3 times heavier than great whites. Or two, that it was a much larger undiscovered shark with an appetite not far off from Dahmer's. Next up, the Devil's Sea, aka the Asian Bermuda Triangle, located in Japan's corner of the Pacific Ocean. In 2014 and 2015, 2 separate passenger planes carrying a total of over 250 people crashed over the waters of the Devil's Sea for no known reason. This prompted people to look into the history of the area, and when they did, they discovered that the disappearance of the two aircrafts were not an isolated incident. In fact, in the 1950s, many large vessels disappeared under mysterious circumstances in the waters as well, with 9 of those disappearances occurring in the span of just 4 years. Because of this, the Japanese government decided to send out a military ship to investigate. Whatever it found, we will never know, because it also disappeared. For whatever reason, the Devil's Sea just sucks up ships and planes down into its watery depths. Perhaps the area is a gateway to hell, as the name implies, or possibly it's electromagnetically charged, or maybe full of sea serpents, or maybe all three. Whatever the reason, you will not catch me there. Next up, we have the submarine disappearances of 1968. Between the months of January and May, 4 submarines from different countries went missing, lost to the deep sea. The first to go down was the Israeli INS Dakar, which disappeared in January in the Mediterranean Sea along with its crew of 69 men. 2 days later, a French submarine, the Minerva, and its crew of 52 men disappeared in the same region. Later, a Soviet nuclear sub with a crew of 98 disappeared in the South Pacific, and after that, another Soviet nuclear sub sank down to the bottom of the North Atlantic Sea. In 1999, the first wreck, the INS Dakar, was found, but it is debated whether or not the sub sank after descending past its abilities or being taken out by opposing forces. The rest of the wrecks remain a complete mystery, but in 1974, the CIA did recover pieces of one of the Soviet nuclear subs, but when asked about their findings, their answers consisted solely of, "We can neither confirm nor deny." So, cover up, I guarantee it. Speaking of mysterious disappearances, we've covered subs, ships, planes, but how about the disappearance of an entire island? Prior to the 18th century, the small island of Bermeja, or Bermeja, I'm sorry guys, I don't know how to pronounce that. Anyways, it was widely featured on maps of the Yucatan Peninsula, which separates the Gulf of Mexico from the Caribbean Sea. However, the depiction of the island slowly started disappearing in the 1700s, with the last confirmed appearance of the island being depicted on a map created in 1921. While you might believe the existence of the island to have been a myth created by ancient cartographers, Mexico actually confirmed the existence of the island and even made 3 attempts to locate its remains in 2009. The missions were unsuccessful, but hope is still out there that one day it will be found. There are 2 main theories surrounding why the island might have disappeared in the first place. 1, rising sea levels caused the low-lying island to sink, and 2, the CIA blew it up because the areas surrounding it were rich in oil and Americans wanted to improve their claim over the area. 2 very different theories, but I want to know which one sounds the most likely to you. We know which one sounds the most likely to me, but let me know your thoughts down below. Next up, we've got aquatic megafauna, gigantic animals that exist within the unexplored depths of the ocean. Although many marine species remain undiscovered, there are a few species of massive aquatic life that we do know of, other than whales and sharks, of course. Both the giant squid and the colossal squid come to mind. The largest giant squid ever recorded measured in to be 43 feet long and weighed in to be almost 1,000 pounds, but it's said that they can measure up to 66 feet and weigh well over 1,000 pounds. The largest recorded colossal squid ever found measured in at just under 43 feet, but weighed over 1,000 pounds at 1,091. But like the giant squid, it is believed that they can grow to be much larger. Both animals have 3 hearts, 8 arms, and 2 tentacles. The giant squid's 8 arms are covered in sharp, serrated suction cups, and the colossal squid suckers are equipped with strong, sharp hooks. Needless to say, you wouldn't want to run into either one. Considering these guys were found with only 5% of the ocean having been explored, I can only imagine what other kinds of gigantic, mysterious creatures we'll find if we keep looking. And I suggest we keep looking. Speaking of giant things in the ocean, let's talk about the Stronsay beast. In 1808, a massive aquatic animal carcass washed up on the shores of Stronsay in Scotland, measuring up to 55 feet in length, even with part of its tail missing. Originally, scientists assumed that the carcass had been that of a large shark, but upon closer inspection it became clear that whatever creature they were looking at had paw-like appendages instead of fins, and so it was decided that the animal was a new species. Since its original discovery back in the 1800s, the animal has not been seen, but maybe one day, if we look hard enough, we'll once again find the creature that likely gave way to tales of Loch Ness monsters. From monsters to aliens. It's a NASA video. We had to include at least one point paying homage to our friends from afar. I mean, I hope they're friendly. There is one distinct structure that comes to mind when you combine the topics of aliens and the deep sea, two of my favorite, and that is the Baltic Sea anomaly. The anomaly was originally discovered in 2011 by sonar imaging by the Sweden Ocean X diving team while they were hunting for treasure on the floor of the northern Baltic Sea. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to tell you that the thing looks like a UFO. The formation seen on the bottom of the seafloor is structured and purposeful, with patterns along the stair-like structures along the sides and top of the, what I'm assuming to be a spacecraft. As far as the public knows, it has only ever been explored using radar, but I have a feeling at least a few people have been down there and are either holding the truth about what they found incredibly close to their chest, or they were killed as soon as they made it back up to the surface. Either one, it's possible. Next up, we have the Jacuzzi of Despair, a deadly lake located at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico. The Jacuzzi has a circumference of about 100 feet and it reaches a depth of about 12. So, how is it that there is a small body of water separated from the ocean located over 3,000 feet below the surface? Well, I'll tell you. The Jacuzzi is actually something called a brine pool, a pocket of water 5 times saltier than the surrounding seawater, so dense that it refuses to mix with its surroundings. Not only that, but brine pools also create the perfect condition for methane gas and hydrogen sulfide to thrive. So although this underwater pool might look cool, anything that is unfortunate enough to enter into its divided waters will most certainly die, and that includes you and me, so let's avoid it. And finally, to finish off our list today, we have Leptocephalus giganticus, but we're just gonna call it Lep because whoever named that thing kinda sucks. I'm looking at you, Peter Henry John Castle. The Lep is an extremely rare species of eel that was discovered in 1959, which was super lucky because the species is known to regularly inhabit the deep depths and it's rarely ever seen. 2 specimens of the species have been studied, but only in their larva baby phase. And given that eel larvae are generally only 1/32nd of their adult life, the fact that one of these specimens measured in at 6 feet long is crazy. And it means it's possible that adults of the species inhabiting the deep can grow to be up to 192 feet long, which would make it the longest aquatic animal, or longest animal altogether for that matter, known to man, far surpassing the lion's mane jellyfish, which is the previous record holder should this turn out to be true. It measures in at 120 feet in length. Blue whale, just for reference, measures in at only 98 feet. Pretty wild stuff.
In spot, we have this haunting call. Whales truly are some of the coolest animals on Earth, and humpback whales are no exception. The males of the species are known for their songs, which last from 10 to 20 minutes and are actually pretty complex. They will repeat these songs for hours at a time, and it honestly isn't exactly known why they sing these songs at all. All the males in the group will produce the same song and it will change seasonally. The females are also able to produce noise, but for some reason it is only the males who seem to produce these long songs. It is unclear how the whales even produce these sounds, however, because they don't actually have vocal cords. This is all super cool and interesting, but the whole reason you're here is for the sound, so let's take a listen to a more haunting track released by the humpback whale. Okay, so please tell me I'm not alone in thinking that that was the most beautifully haunting sound I've ever heard come from the sea. But also imagine being alone in the ocean, not knowing what that was, and then hearing it. Probably pretty terrifying, right? At least we're all safe here in YouTube land. In our number 9 spot today, we have this marine chorus. Okay, so out of context, if I played you this sound, what would you think it is? Definitely not something underwater, right? Well, as it turns out, this sound was indeed captured under the water, and these are the sounds of fish calls. While I always expected the chorus of marine animals to sound a little more similar to the stylings of Sebastian the crab, apparently that isn't even close. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even know that most fish had calls, but it turns out that our human ears just can't perceive all of the hoots, moans, barks, and chirps that take place in the vast seas. This recording actually helped scientists realize that there are fish who sing together in a chorus every day at dusk and dawn. There have now been around 800 species of fish that have been identified and confirmed to make some form of noise, and apparently some fish even engage in shouting matches in noisier parts of the ocean, which is kind of hilarious to imagine. I guess on the list of creepy noises, this one is less creepy and more just informative. In our number 8 spot today, we have the whistle. This is a sound that was first recorded in 1997 by the NOAA and was the source of many mysteries for years while people speculated about what may have caused the sound. While it still isn't exactly clear, it is now believed that the sound may have come from an underwater volcano eruption. If you didn't know, underwater or submarine volcanoes are located in all oceans on our Earth, and they're extremely interesting. There are certain kinds of marine animals that only exist near these extreme environments. Many submarine volcanoes are located near the areas of tectonic plate formations, which are also known as mid-ocean ridges. There's a YouTube user called Some Canadian, and they left a comment on a video of this whistle sound that pretty much sums it up exactly. First, we'll listen to the sound played at 10 times the original speed. The comment read, quote, "It could be the sound of something moving through tunnels. 1. Volcanic eruptions and gases. 2. Something big and hungry. You choose." I think they might really be onto something there. In our number 7 spot today, we have bloop. Why are all of the weirdest ocean sounds first recorded in 1997? Bloop is another one that came from that year, and it was a loud and unusual sound that was placed as occurring several times off the southern coast of South America, and it was so loud that it could be heard over 5,000 kilometers away. At first, researchers were confused because, while the sound was actually similar to known sounds of living creatures, it was just way too loud that not even the blue whale, the largest living creature, could have produced it. So what is it then? Well, as it turns out, it is in fact not the Kraken, and instead it is actually consistent with ice quakes that are generated by large icebergs as they crack and fracture. It seems like this sound, going with that explanation, doesn't really make sense, but hey, I'm no scientist. But here's the sound for you to judge for yourself. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Western Pacific biotwang. In 2014, researchers and scientists heard weird sounds coming from the Mariana Trench, which, for the record, seems like the worst place for there to be strange noises coming from. For years, experts couldn't pin down this sound, and it was dubbed the Western Pacific biotwang, and while there is now a theory that was proposed by researchers from Oregon State University, they have also said that they might be entirely wrong. First, for reference, here's a little clip of the sound I'm talking about. Okay, so if you're like me, my mind immediately went to something alien related or some sort of creature that perhaps we haven't yet discovered. I mean, this is the Mariana Trench we're talking about. The theory put forward by the Oregon State researchers was that perhaps this may be a new type of baleen whale call. Okay, that's probably the best of all of the options, but I really don't like when someone tells me the answer to a scientific mystery only to tell me that that might not actually be the answer at all. While the low part of the sound would make sense to attribute to the baleen whale, it's the end high-pitched twangy part that would be incredibly unique. The wide range of frequencies in the sound are what continues to baffle those who are trying to find the source of this mysterious sound. In our number 5 spot today, we have Julia. Julia is a sound that was recorded in 1999 by the US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, which I've already talked about today. It sounds like it could be straight out of a horror movie, so considering it was a sound that came from our ocean and at first no one could tell where it had come from, it really was quite frightening. The sound has now likely been demystified, as researchers are pretty positive they know the origin of it. It is now believed that this sound was caused by an iceberg running aground off Antarctica. The sound, however, was insanely loud. It was so loud that it could be heard over the entire equatorial Pacific Ocean autonomous hydrophone array. Researchers were later able to narrow down what they believe may have been the point where the sound originated, although they've never actually been able to pinpoint it exactly. Most of the time when people hear the Julia sound, they hear it sped up at 16 times the original speed, but today we are going to listen to a clip of the sound at regular speed because I think it is much more eerie this way. In our number 4 spot today we have Knock. Okay, this is one that I'll admit was not captured by a submarine, but it was still underwater and it truly is terrifying. A few years ago, a beluga whale named Knock, who was unfortunately in captivity, was recorded as he swam below the water. Beluga whales have been called the canaries of the sea, and for good reason, but Knock really wanted to up the ante and instead blessed us all with this sound. Knock had this uncanny ability to mimic the rhythm and tone of human voices, and it truly is kind of frightening. It of course is also a little sad, as part of this was probably because he spent most of his life being forced to listen to humans speak because he was being held in captivity. Before this recording of Knock, the voices of belugas and their sometimes human-like sounds have been talked about, but Knock was the first time it was recorded, and honestly, I kind of wish it hadn't been. In our number 3 spot today we have the bioduck. Since the 1960s, this sound has absolutely stumped researchers who heard it. This sound was basically what the name attributed to it would suggest. It sounded like some sort of mechanical duck. For decades, researchers would hear this sound and it would often be heard and recorded again in the spring and winters. After all of these years though, it seems as though the answers to this mysterious sound are finally coming to light. In 2013, researchers attached sensors that collect acoustic data to 2 whales. One of those tags recorded for 18 hours and the other for 8, and the whales they were attached to were traveling with other whales in groups of 5 to 40, and they were all eating basically the entire time. Throughout this time, with the tags on the whales, there were a total of 32 calls heard, and this data is what led researchers to finally understand where the bioduck sound was coming from. As it turns out, this mysterious sound was actually the call of the minke whale. Researchers still aren't exactly clear as to what the call means to the whales, but it was a fantastic discovery that finally closed an almost 50-year-old scientific mystery. In our number 2 spot today we have upsweep. We all know how little we know about the ocean, and that also includes what kind of creatures lie in it. So while this mysterious sound out of context probably wouldn't be that freaky, when put into this situation it becomes quite a bit more eerie. This sound is referred to as upsweep, and it was caught when the Pacific Marine Environmental Laboratory started its sound surveillance system in August of 1991. The sound is apparently more seasonal, with its peaks in spring and fall, but it is unclear if the changing of seasons is responsible for this sound, or if it's coming from something that lurks in the ocean and remains undiscovered. Just for reference, here's a clip of that sound played at 20 times the original speed. It is possible that this sound could be coming from underwater volcanic activity, but it is also possible that it's not, so who really knows? In our number 1 spot today we have an earthquake. Okay, so to add another creepy Mariana Trench sound to this list, we have one that was taken from the bottom of the Challenger Deep. In fact, it was the first ever sound recording to be taken from the bottom of the Challenger Deep, so it's a pretty cool scientific advancement as well as a terrifying sound. Despite the crushing pressures and the fact that there's no sunlight, the Challenger Deep is actually pretty noisy, and that is because of the fact that sound travels a really long way underwater, which ends up kind of turning the Challenger Deep into a sort of echo chamber of oceanic sounds. So while the recording was able to pick up things like the sound of a boat almost 11 kilometers overhead and the sounds of whale calls, they were also able to pick up the sound of a magnitude 5 earthquake rumbling near Guam on July 16, 2015. Not gonna lie, while being one of the scariest things I've ever heard, this is also one of the coolest things I've ever heard in my life too. Science really is just so cool sometimes. Jellyfish. The immortal jellyfish is a species of small, biologically immortal jellyfish found worldwide in tropical waters. Given the nickname immortal jellyfish for its ability to revert back to a polyp stage while it's starving or in danger and basically escaping death, researchers believe this jellyfish may hold the cure to cancer. Under normal conditions, its life cycle is divided into 4 parts. The union of the male and female gametes produces a larva or planula. It then attaches to the seabed as a polyp, similar to an anemone. The polyps then release ephora, or a young jellyfish, into the phase prior to sexual maturity. They become jellyfish, reproduce sexually, and start over. But if they are stressed by an environmental threat, the jellyfish revert. After reproducing, they return to the previous phases, becoming polyps in the ocean floor again. As far as scientists know, jellyfish can repeat the process indefinitely. Thus, they are said to be biologically immortal. They can be eaten by a predator or fall into the hands of a swimmer, but they do not die of old age, which is pretty cool. Number 9. River at the bottom of the Black Sea. The Black Sea is one of the most isolated from the world's oceans, and there is a river flowing along the bottom of it. Now, it's just not a normal river. Oh no, it's complete with trees, leaves, and even waterfalls. One major difference is that the underwater river, when rounding a bend, moves in currents spinning the opposite direction from those on land. It has been an intriguing aspect of the ocean since it was found. According to scientists, if the river was on land, it would be the 6th largest river in the world in terms of the volume of water flowing through it. The discovery of the river, announced on August 1st, 2010, was made by scientists at the University of Leeds, and it is the first of its kind in the world. Number 8. The Mariana Trench. In the western Pacific Ocean, you will find the deepest part of the sea. The Mariana Trench is deeper than the height of Mount Everest, 43 miles wide, and a massive 1,580 miles long, which is 5 times longer than the Grand Canyon. A certified U.S. national monument, only small areas of the Mariana Trench have been explored. James Cameron reached the bottom in a submersible vessel Deepsea Challenger in 2012, with the last successful attempt to search the ocean floor coming in 2020, when the Chinese submersible Fenduji made it all the way down. Several new species of underwater creatures have been discovered in the Mariana Trench, with most living on the surface of the ocean floor, including a type of sea cucumber. Explorers will find themselves in total darkness as they continue to understand what else lies in the deepest parts of the ocean and how marine life manages to survive. Number 7. Los Mahabalipuram Pagodas. The Los Pagodas was long considered a myth by many because of the lack of scientific evidence of its existence. But in 2004, when the infamous Indian Ocean tsunami hit, for a brief moment when the waters parted, large rock-like structures emerged from the water and were witnessed by many onlookers. The Los Mahabalipuram Pagodas in India, making it an incredible discovery. The remains of an ancient city were found in 2001 off the coast of India. Scientists retrieved many different items from the large city, including artwork, hand tools, fossilized bones, and pottery shards. What makes the discovery incredible is that the city is thought to be around 9,000 years old, which predates to the earliest Indian civilizations that sprung up 4,000 years ago. There is still not a lot known about this ancient city, as scientists and archaeologists continue to search the area for more clues and debate how old the city really is and who once inhabited it. But Wow. Number 6. The 2,400-year-old boat in the Black Sea. Archaeologists working with engineers from the Black Sea Maritime Archaeology Project, aka MAP, have discovered a 23-meter shipwreck that has laid undisturbed for more than 2,400 years. The find is believed to be the oldest intact shipwreck ever discovered. Thanks to the lack of oxygen in the Black Sea and the fact it was discovered a mile below the surface means it is exceptionally well preserved. The 75-foot vessel is thought to be ancient Greek. It still has its mast, rudders, and rowing benches. Speaking to The Guardian, Professor John Adams, the principal investigator with MAP, explained, "A ship surviving intact from the classical world, lying in over 2 kilometers of water is something I would have never believed possible, and that it will change our understanding of shipbuilding and seafaring in the ancient world." The ship is thought to be a trading vessel. However, up to now, the design has only been seen on the size of ancient Greek pottery. The find is an archaeological first. The team have left the vessel untouched, apart from a small sample that was used to carbon date it by the University of Southampton. Number 5. $150 million of lost silver. At the bottom of the Atlantic for more than a century, a 150-year-old steamship had been found in 2003. The ship is the Republic, which sailed from New York in 1865, just after the Civil War, carrying 59 passengers and crew and mixed cargo meant to help New Orleans recover from the war. About 100 miles off Georgia, battling a hurricane, it sank in waters a third of a mile deep. Its cargo of lost coins, experts say, may now be up to worth $150 million. That would make it one of history's richest treasure wrecks. "It's a dream come true," said Dr. Donald H. Kagan, an expert on 19th century coins who is advising the company that discovered the wreck. There are piles of coins. The company Odyssey Marine Exploration of Tampa, Florida, who announced the find, said it hoped to retrieve all the coins. The company has retrieved more than 1,600 gold and silver coins, and none are dated later than 1865, tending to confirm the wreck's identity, said George Stem, the company's director of operations. "For some reason, even the silver coins are in great condition. Part of it is surely the physical environment down there," he said. "The icy deep explorers are still finding can often preserve objects, even precious metals like silver, that normally corrode easily. It's like finding a real treasure, and I would definitely like to receive some of those special coins." Number 4. Giant squid. The Kraken is a legendary sea monster of enormous size that is said to appear off the coast of Norway. Now, this is a mythical creature, but there is some truth to it. A giant squid was found on shore in Denmark in 1853. The giant squid is as elusive as the legend it inspired. It lives so deep underwater that we have limited information about it. However, we know it has the largest eyes of all living creatures, grows up to 18 meters, and is frequently hunted by sperm whales for food. The weaker giant squid generally flees when confronted by a whale. However, it sometimes fights back when cornered, and it's not unusual to find sperm whales with scars left from their battles with giant squids. It wasn't until the turn of the century in 2001 that humans saw the giant squid for the first time, and only a few years after that when it was finally photographed, making it one of the most elusive on the planet. The giant squid has long been known to exist, but capturing it on film has taken scientists extensive time and voyages to the deepest parts of the ocean where life is difficult to sustain. Number 3. Elongated skulls. Saquayum is a cenote located in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. It is a place that locals feared, and in 2012 a team of divers discovered the reason behind its fearsome reputation. An underwater survey discovered 2 chambers of the cenote littered with human bones, including deformed skulls. Archaeologists spent 2 weeks exploring the 2 chambers. The skulls belong to different sexes and ages, so they aren't thought to be sacrifices, which begs the question, why are they buried deep underwater? Archaeologist Bradley Russell, who made the discovery, believes the dead may have been buried as some form of ritual, or that they could be the victims of a plague that swept through the area. You wouldn't want them near the rest of the population, and you wouldn't want to drink the water either, Russell explained. Regardless, that's creepy. And why are the skulls elongated? Are they another species of human? I have so many questions. Number 2. Baltic Sea anomaly. In 2011, a sonar image was taken by Peter Lindberg, Dennis Erberg, and their Swedish Ocean X diving team while searching for treasures on the ocean floor in the Baltic Sea. What the picture showed was a seemingly non-natural 200-foot circular object with passageways and stairs. The discovery looked like something out of a Star Wars film, and many people believed it was a spaceship that sank to the bottom of the ocean. Samples taken from the area in 2012 were given to Swedish scientists who said that there was nothing extraterrestrial about the area, but I'm not too sure about that. What Ocean X and the crew had found was weird, and many still think there is a UFO lying at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, and there's another expedition to the area planned soon. And coming in at number 1 is giant underwater pyramids. Off the coast of Portugal in the Atlantic Ocean is an anomaly that experts have been unable to fully understand or explain. Picked up by oceanic GPS technology, measurements of a structure were found, leading researchers to believe that 2 giant pyramids of ancient times sit underwater thousands of feet below the surface. The GPS data received back has the structures with a base of 8,000 square feet and about 150 feet tall, making these pyramids pretty giant in size. But there's very little explanation into their existence, leaving it entirely up to speculation. Why would they be there? Is it another hidden city? Who knows? The pyramid has been underwater for about 20,000 years. Considering this is around the time of the last ice age, where glaciation was melting from its peak 2,000 years prior, whatever civilization, human or not, that was around before the ice age could be responsible for building the pyramid. While the Portuguese Navy still hasn't determined the origins, many might question why this hasn't been first reported sooner than late 2012. To further support the idea that this pyramid could have been built by different civilizations, archaeologists from the Portuguese Association of Archaeological Research have recently discovered evidence on Pico Island that suggests their belief that humans existed in the Azores region before the arrival of the Portuguese thousands of years ago. Spooky.
Want to see more videos like this one? Check out this video next. It's about real-life anomalies found in the universe. Well, y'all, go ahead and click the video now to find out more about this creepy and actually kind of cool video. Now see if you can figure out what scientists can't. I bet it's a real brain teaser.